we know that also here again, stronger athletes can get more out of it. They tolerate it more. I mean, often also it's just like a good warm-up effect. So maybe if the intensity in the warm-up was not good enough, then with the potentiation, you definitely have this high
Mm.
intensity warm-up. But we use that quite a lot, especially close to competitions. So what I use sometimes, it's just like a monitoring in the warm-up where we have like fixed load, and we make some reps at this fixed load just to have a feedback about their readiness on the day
Mm.
of training. Then when we go into the session, we try to control a bit the weight we are using on that day, and then also the velocity drop. So
Hello and welcome back to PA Chalk Up. Today we have the founder of SSCA, which is the Swiss Strength and Conditioning Association. Jan, how we doing?
hi, how you doing, man?
So if you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got here.
Yeah. So my name is Jan Seiler. I'm working at the Swiss Federal Institute of Sports as a strength training expert. And my background actually is in alpine skiing as an athlete and also coaching for a long time. But now I'm in charge for the resistance training quality up in Macklingen, so at this institute for the high elite athletes and also the potentially bests that are training or select to come up here and make their preparation, but also rehab. And we really try to support them through the processes, really providing like high end support in resistance training, and also a lot of support to the coaches if they have any questions around training strategies or optimizing their training. And yeah, and then as you said, yeah, I'm a board member of the Swiss Strength and Conditioning Association, where we try to provide evidence-based strength and conditioning information. We are continuing further education stuff, webinars, workshops, stuff like that.
Yeah. How did you go from sort of a high end level athlete to then doing more of the strength and conditioning stuff?
So, well, actually, already as an athlete, I was really interested in strength and conditioning for myself. And then via my career as a coach in alpine skiing, I built up that side more and more via the bachelor and master studies,
Mm.
and then coming up to the high elite level in alpine skiing, and then from there I dropped in more into the rehab stuff actually, and coming out from the rehab with a lot of work together with physiotherapists already here in Mocklingen. I then had the chance to take the position I have now, so to be an expert or specialist in resistance training, where actually, yeah, we combine rehab, where this is really important, but also to try to peak performance via yeah different strategies, high-end strategies in resistance training.
Yeah. So how would you break down your role and what you do with the athletes and support staff there?
Um, Yeah, it's different. It depends also a lot on the sports. You know, we have a lot of sports that do not have the build up in resistance training, or they don't have the knowledge, which is often the case in endurance type sports. So they are really happy to have this support, but you also know that there you make a lot of basic work. So we introducing them to resistance training, um, learning them to work with the barbell and stuff like that. So really basic stuff. And on the other hand, we have other sports like a lot of track and field disciplines, where or also winter sport like skiing or snowboarding, um, where they grow or they grew up with resistance training, so they have a higher level when they
Mm.
come into Macklingen, and there we can really like start at a higher level and introducing advanced methods like accelerated eccentric training, or we're doing a lot of velocity based training as well. And so different levels have different needs, and we really try to cover all of that. And unfortunately, for a lot of them, the start is also, or the first contact is also via rehab. But I would say we can really support them a lot during the rehab, because we are
Mhm.
really close to research, physiotherapy, psychology, and all the diagnostics. So it's pretty close, all here together. So we have a good like interprofessional setting to support these athletes.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you do in terms of the rehabilitation side of your role?
Yeah. So at the very beginning of the rehab, I normally take in charge like the parts where are not injured. So if they have like leg injuries, I try to work around core, upper body stuff. And then when the process is going further progressing, and then I come more and more in also for the injured part of the body. But the good thing is really that we are really close with the physiotherapists, and we can then really manage the load. So when I try to push a bit more, maybe the physiotherapist can adapt and also compensate a little bit. And as you know, it's always a thin line in elite sports. So it's good to have this backup, and it gives me a lot of confidence, and also to push a bit and be secured from the physiotherapist side. And so normally I can say that we are able to do really a good quality rehabs, and also with the diagnostics that we can do on a regular basis, which supports us a lot us in this process.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's a very fine
Yes.
line
Yeah.
between when it's the physio's turn or the S&C coach's turn, and
Yeah.
I usually find that the better the communication between the physio and the S&C coach are, the quicker and easier the athlete can progress through these sort of milestones in their injuries.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also think that it's good that I'm in the boat from the very beginning, even if I'm not working on the injured part. But that creates good confidence, a lot of exchange between athlete, physio, and me. And this is helping a lot. And I think we are also able to respect the boundaries, and we exactly know what are the strength of the physiotherapist, and what are the qualities that I can bring in. And with this, knowing these boundaries, that helps, that we can really come up together.
100%. And like at the end of the day, we're there for the athletes. So the easier that communication and that handoff period is, it's quite useful to get that nailed so that your athletes don't essentially have to do extra to sort of keep going in their progress.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you kind of mentioned VBT. How do you implement that within your coaching and the roles that you partake in?
Yeah. So normally I use that with athletes that I'm coaching a lot, or for a longer period. I have athletes, they come 4 times a week, or we have others I just see them like once in 2 months. So it's a bit different. But for the athletes that I see many times, I try to use that, but with different purposes. So what I use sometimes, it's just like a monitoring in the warm up, where we have like a fixed load, and we make some reps at this fixed load just to have a feedback about their readiness on the day
Mhm.
of training. Then when we go into the session, we try to control a bit the weight we are using on that day, and then also the velocity drop. So really trying to managing the fatigue accumulation, because especially in very in sports that are highly explosive, this is super important. We try to do very high intensity, but too much fatigue accumulation, it's hindering then the process to become more and more explosive. So I think this additional information from measuring bore velocity is really good to manage the general load, which we are missing when we are just yeah, talking about sets and reps and weights. It's not enough anymore.
What sort of VBT device do you use? And
Yeah, so normally we use GymAware,
mm,
so it's quite like the gold standard. We also did some validation from different tools that measure peak and mean velocities, and it's definitely the gold standard. But the anode sensor, so it was Vmax before, now it's anode. It's definitely a good one as well. It's but this one is
mm,
an accelerometer. But yeah, I mean it's important the quality of the tool you use, because if not, you cannot use the data at the
yeah.
end.
How important for you is it to check your athlete's readiness before and before a session?
It's important, especially to store the discussion. If you really see a drop, then really to ask what do you really feel, or what happened, or because sometimes the number can show something, but sometimes it's also like if you measure them in the session, it's maybe not the same response you thought it would be by monitoring before, but it's important to create a big baseline,
Mhm.
and only after that you are really able to take a decision. Is it fatigue or not? Because I mean, we can decide 5% or 10% drop, but it's arbitrary, so we do not really know. So I think it's important for every individual to grow up with the data and the discussion to really be sure afterwards. Okay, a drop of 5 or 10%, it's means really something for that athlete, maybe not for another one. And then also to have a strategy. What do I adapt? Do I just adapt the load? Do I just adapt the volume, or both? And yeah, I think you need some experiences to really manage that information. But for me, the easiest way at the very beginning is just starting to measure at some point. Just get used to measuring, get used to those numbers. What does it mean? How does it
Mhm.
react if you train to more or less fatigue? And
Yeah, no, like VBT for me as well is you can also ultimately decide whether it's like a physical fatigue or like a mental fatigue, because a lot of these athletes they also have lives outside the gym. They could get their nutrition right, they could get their sleep right, they could get everything right essentially, but if they've had like a
absolutely.
fallout with a friend or a partner or family members, that can still really impact their
Yeah,
results.
yeah.
How do you sort of differentiate um physical to like mental and psychological fatigue?
Yeah. So I mean the subjective assessment is really important, and what I often also heard from athletes is just by asking the questions, I go into the reflection of myself. So it's just to wake up the reflection at some point. And but here again, some are reacting more or less to an issue or problem. So I think there is not a general solution, but at the very end, the discussion is really important, I
Mhm.
think, and to try to feel or for some athletes, when I see them coming into the gym and I look at their eyes, I already have the answer, you know. So, yeah, I mean, everyone is a bit different. But for me, it is important to have the information, but also to have objective data and then to take up a decision, but in or after discussion with the athlete, because it's important that they are also into the process of decision making.
100%. I'm a very broken record right now, and this gets talked about every episode. Is like you can tell a lot of how an athlete is doing just by like when they come in, giving them a fist bump. Like you can tell a lot just from like a little
Yeah,
fist bump. If they've got energy, if they're excited for this, they'll give you like a hard knock uh,
absolutely.
fist bump. But if they're like feeling some type of way, they'll give you like a half-assed
Yeah,
fist.
yeah,
A good example is one of the athletes I coach. He a couple weeks back, he had a lot of stuff going on with work, but he came into the gym and just like every time he fist bumped, it was just like it wasn't what it usually is, and I was like,
yeah,
at the end of
yeah.
the session, I was like, what
Something's
happened?
going on.
And he was like, oh, just work, coach. I did a lot happened today at work, and I was like, say no more. Are you okay? Have you drunk anything? Just make sure you keep on top of that, and then the
Yeah,
session just sort of comes. It also gives that athlete that buy-in that you're not just interested in their athletic ability, but you're actually interested in them as a person as well.
yeah. This is important, and then it might also change your coaching style on that day, actually. So maybe yeah, use different words or I don't know, but I think it's important really to trying to individualize at that level also.
100%. With alpine skiing, what was your sort of biggest takeaway that you now use as a coach?
It's definitely a tough sport because the organization it's really complicated. So the load management is super important because you're traveling a lot. You often in summer up on 3,500 or even 4,000 meters above sea level. You know, so it's highly demanding on that side as well. So then the fatigue management really plays a big role. And what I learned most also in the work I did, because we worked a lot on production of prevention, like exercise planning or strategies, and this is what really I still can get a lot out of it nowadays. And you know, prevention is really important, but I don't like the term prevention because if you are able to do a high quality or good quality training, so prevention it's goes with it, you know. So I think it's important to have a good knowledge to provide high quality strategies, and then you're able to create the robustness that you
Mhm.
need, which then has this preventive effect at the end. And then also, I think it's a long term thing. So if you're able to start early with the young athletes and build them up, then you have a good chance to create robust athletes and really protect them against overuse injuries or
Mm,
also traumatic injuries.
100%. I often talk about it's essentially preparing to be injured, and what I mean by that is injuries are obviously you're not able to control them when they happen, how they happen, but you can essentially mitigate how long they'll be out for by including this preparation work. And it's not like an intervention because it can happen at any point. Like
Yeah,
there's no one thing that can control it.
yeah,
But if you build enough muscle and controllability and stability within a certain joint group or muscle group, you can essentially reduce the amount of time that they'll be out for, because that
Absolutely.
diet is already strong. So it's essentially just how can we get them back, because we've already done the hard work, which is getting that muscle or that stabilizing muscles stronger. But how can we get them back quicker now?
Yeah. But what I also recognize is that stronger athletes, they definitely have an easier rehab normally because they bring really this robustness with them. Yes, they can get injured for sure, as you said, but they have a chance to make a better or a quicker rehab, having created this robustness, definitely.
Is that something that you've sort of experienced within your athletes?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. Yeah, but I mean, everyone is different also here, but I think seen overall, I would say definitely yes.
Yeah, it's it's something that I'm quite interested in, is the injuries and how to come back, because like what we were discussing at the start, is when does it go from a physiotherapy's job to a strength and conditioner's job, and how do we effectively come up with that solution?
Yeah, no, I think this is really important. But I mean, if they bring in a good level into a rehab, that often means also that they have been really let's say interested by themselves to do a lot of strength and conditioning
Mm.
before. Not everyone likes it the same, I would say, which is normal. But they're really yeah, they have a big buy-in to strength and conditioning, and that helps at the end.
Yeah, with alpine skiing, obviously altitude plays a big factor into what you do. Um, what are some considerations that you sort of recommend for athletes that are perhaps going into high altitudes for either their competitions or training?
Yeah. So I think nutrition is a big thing. It's really an important thing for the recovery. But I mean for everyone. But this plays definitely a big role, especially when you or are at that altitude, training at that altitude. And I think generally you have to have good aerobic capacity, good basic endurance capacity to tolerate this high altitude. And yeah, even in alpine skiing, we're often talking about, yeah, what do you really need? Because you're skiing for like, yeah, 52 seconds to maybe 1 minute 30 or something in one run. But at the end, your exposure to these high altitudes or the density of competitions and whatever asks for a high aerobic capacity anyway. So I think this is important, that when you're at high altitude and when you do high intensity repetitions, that this recovery process is really good. So that means also that your buffering system has to work really good. And yeah, so you definitely need the strategies to train for aerobic
Mm.
capacities, but also having a good buffering system, because you do like short but pretty high intensity exercise up there.
Yeah, what's your favorite protocol that you recommend for athletes in high altitude?
Yeah, I mean it's not depending on just one protocol. It's
Mm.
overall, and here again, I mean, to create a very high level where you really good enough to tolerate the load. It's a long-term build-up. And what I recognized is definitely if young athletes come out from families that are doing a lot of different sports, but a lot of exposure to exercise and sports, they already have a good basis that helps a lot to work on more specific things earlier. And if you have athletes that come out maybe of families that don't have this lifestyle, but they can definitely end up in a sports, high sports discipline. Then sometimes it's tricky to have the time to build this base because they're already at the age where you try to or where you should do more specific stuff, but then it's more difficult. So I think the long-term build-up it's something that is really important. But I also know that for under 12 years old athletes or kids, it's not easy to have an influence on that. So this is what we cannot change or manage. So it's also really depending on your family background, definitely.
100%. I am a big firm believer that kids should be exposed to as many sports as possible from like a very early age,
Yeah.
and then when they get to like they're at 15, 16s, they can sort of narrow down their choice till they eventually get their sport.
Yes.
But I think early exposure to multiple sports sort of brings out these qualities in an athlete that can prepare them for any type of movement within that their specific sport. They're more efficient with their movement as well.
Mhm.
Is that something that you see a lot in your best athletes compared to some of the other athletes?
Good question. To be honest, I often do not really know where they're coming from at a very early age. It's more like what we know those days that this is a big problem that often we start too late because we are afraid to bring them into some kind of exercise or stuff, or yeah, the circumstances don't allow to do that. And but I agree on your point that the earliest possible and really and a big variety of exercises or sport disciplines. This is definitely a really good basis for all that comes afterwards in terms of high sports performance.
100%. What's the sort of how did the SSCA sort of come up from what you are doing?
Yeah. So now we are now 10 years. We will have a 10 years anniversary this year. And so some of my friends and myself, we're all finishing up our master's degree in high performance sport. And what we recognized then was that for a lot of these people coming out of these master degrees, they lack in coaching experience or also practical experience. And at the very beginning, we really tried to give them the opportunity to learn a lot practical stuff to be able to coach. And but from the very beginning, as we're all coming out with an academic background, we really wanted to push forward the evidence-based or evidence-informed approach to strength and conditioning, because the quality we can bring in via an evidence approach is definitely really important and becomes more and more important because yeah, research it's growing up in that area, and we know a lot of things now coming out from research. But then the next step is really how can we put research into practice, and we really try to help um, to create this connection by doing workshops, webinars, and yeah, but not just for the academics, for everyone actually. So all the activities are open to everyone. But to be a member, you need a master's degree in high performance sports. And so we really try to push this community, bring people together, but to create or build up a better level, coaching level, strength and conditioning level for everyone at the end.
Yeah. Could you give us a little breakdown of how the course is run and the different modules and sort of exams or tests that there is within the
Um,
SS?
Yeah, so we don't have kind of exams or stuff like that. It's really just like creating information, sharing information, and doing workshops. So normally we run like 2 or 3 webinars a year, which are free. We have 2 half-day workshops, practical workshops, where we do kind of weightlifting stuff or med ball training or yeah, things like that. Where we also try to don't to have too many um, participants to guarantee high quality
Mm,
coaching. And then every year in October or November, we have our big 2 days. This year it's a 3 days workshop in Mocklingen. Yeah, here you can see the program of this year's workshop, the anniversary workshop, where we really try to bring together a lot of people, a lot of speakers, international speakers if possible. So this year we really have a great lineup with Brad Schoenfeld, Timothy Sochomel, and others. And it's also a sign of the direction we take. So as I told you, we really are looking for this evidence-based or evidence-informed
mm.
approach.
What is one of the non-negotiables that you have that coaches must have or must know during these workshops and sort of events that you run?
I don't know. I think the most important those days anyway, it's you have to be open to share. You
Mm,
know, it's not about secrets. It's just about to be open to learn from others, and it's a lot about sharing and caring. And I often think that the new generation is much more open to that. But I mean, the communication it's also easier those days. But I think the day you think you know all and you think you have something that is really special and you make a secret out of it, then definitely going the wrong way, I think.
100%. That's essentially why I also created this podcast. Is I often say this podcast is very selfishly for me. Like I love, like I mentioned that before the podcast, I love speaking to coaches and I love learning about strength and conditioning. But it's these conversations that you pick up little nuances that make your coaching experience better, and coming out with a mentality where I'm a really good coach, I don't need to know anything else. I think that limits you from achieving more. So like
Absolutely.
I always say this, like there's been times where I've gotten my sort of I've been questioned on certain things in this industry, and I've questioned people in this industry as well. And their explanation kind of made me think, oh, actually, maybe actually this is quite important. So I should maybe tweak how I coach, tweak
Mm,
this methodology. And the best example that I always say is deadlifting.
yeah.
I used to be very strict on all my athletes must deadlift conventional straight bar.
Mm,
I was like, yeah, that's just basic for me. But then I spoke to a coach who was like, what's the risk to reward ratio on that? And I was like, quite good. I've always deadlifted. I know how to deadlift. I know how to coach deadlift. So for me, uh, there's more reward to risk. And then they questioned me again and were like, yeah, but what if someone's just coming in and doesn't have a great coach or doesn't know how to deadlift? And then I was like, oh, actually, yeah, the risk might be quite high compared to the rewards. So from then on, I've sort of adopted this more trap bar deadlift where it's a little bit safer, a little bit
mm,
more
mm, mm.
you're able to keep everything a little bit more stricter and
Yeah,
controlled as opposed to a deadlift where there's
yeah.
more pressure on the lower back.
Mm, mm.
Is
But I
that
mean,
some?
yeah, I mean, this is also, I mean, a type of individualization. I usually or often I take the example of cyclists, because we work quite a lot also in the endurance sports, and when I see training programs, everyone is squatting, everyone is deadlifting, but if you know cyclists, you know that the squatting and the deadlifting may never be at the intensity they it should be to really train the legs, because the trunk and the upper body is just not strong enough,
Mm. Yeah.
so it's not just because everyone should squat or should deadlift or should clean a bar, if they're not able to do because they haven't been prepared to it, then we definitely have to look after different strategies. And then at the same point, why uh, for a cyclist the leg press is not the better option? For sure, I think it's the better option. You can really highly load the legs. Um, and anyway, they're sitting on their bike. I don't know if they really need to squat. I don't think so. It's also on that point that you have to be able to look at what is really needed, to also look
Mm.
where they come from. Are they really able to use a certain exercise with the aim you have normally with that exercise? If it's not possible, you have to look after another solution, or you have to be honest with yourself. I need like 5 years of build up. Do I have that time? Often not.
100%. My favorite example of that is squat. It is exactly what you're saying, squatting, but in different sports. It's like squatting for a rugby player, full depth, brilliant because they're having to be in that position during their sport. But say we take basketball, yes, they're squatting if they do a 3 point or a three throw, but where is that squat coming from then? Is it coming from full depth? No, it's coming from core. So would it be more beneficial to give a basketball athlete a full squat or a quarter squat? And then it's like that loading mechanism. How much weight should we really load these athletes? Do they need high loads? Do they need sort of more reps but high intensity? I
Yeah,
think different sports require different movements, and I
yeah,
think
yeah,
we
yeah,
shouldn't look at sort of athletes and say all athletes need this program
yeah,
because there's nuances to their sport and their movements that I think that could be better tailored to if we look at the movement as opposed to certain specific exercises.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, talking about the basketball athletes, the tall athlete is it's not a special athlete. For squatting, this is really tough, and then yeah, sometimes you just need to accept that, and yeah, try to build up until the level that is possible. But if it is not going further, also to accept that, because yeah, they have like other leg length or stuff, so it's biomechanically just yeah, super difficult to do some exercises.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about running these workshops and then going back and coaching?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me often it's good that we see that people can learn and take out a lot of it, and it's also that maybe the philosophy we try to bring in to these workshops is if they go back coaching the next day, we have to guarantee that they can already yeah, use something out of that workshop. So it's not about complicated things, but just giving them tools that they can use the day after. And I mean, which is fun also is then with the discussions we have, and yeah, we learn every time, because anyone is coming with another background, or other philosophies or ideas into it. And as you said, it's about asking and reflecting, and so it's an ongoing learning process for everyone that is involved. And that is what I really like out of these workshops, especially if you stay in a quite small group setting where you can really have a lot of discussions and reflection.
Hmm. What's the sort of hardest part about sort of sport in Switzerland and this adaptation of strength and conditioning?
Um, well, I think at the end it's also here you have so many different philosophies, and to bring those people together and trying to or to convince them that we can learn every day from everyone, and we can grow up together if we
Mm,
share, and I think this is the biggest challenge. But what I also recognize this last couple of years, that is we are really or we can benefit from a pretty small country. We really have the chance to bring people together, especially up here in Macklingen, where we also run the Swiss coaches education. And as we are a small country, yeah, we were able to bring those people together and really to share the philosophies we are
mm,
creating. So compared maybe, I talk a lot also with German coaches, and it's completely different thing in a country with a lot of people and a bigger area to bring these people together and to create philosophies, which are then learned or also taught everywhere.
yeah, I think that's one of the most surprising things about sort of Europe compared to the US, where they've got the NSCA, but Europe, because we're so many different countries, we there's often not there's not that one body that sort of encompasses every country. And from sort of speaking to you and speaking to Daniela, speaking to Francisco, speaking to other different coaches from around Europe and people who have like these accredited associations, is how much there's like social, economic, or social event for that country like feeds into this program. So like for Swiss, you'll do things differently than Germany or the
Yeah.
UK. And I think those nuances are quite important to consider when trying to reach out to like multiple countries. Is that something that you've sort of been able to speak to these different people and sort of implement into your program as well?
Well, I mean, often it's also political thing, and I mean, then the discussion is quite tricky. But also here, I always try to tell them, yeah, maybe use the evidence, because the evidence is international. Yeah, so if you take it that way, we may have a chance to come to a similar level or similar knowledge, because those days, I mean, science is really open. Science, you can find the science if you're looking for, and
Mm,
this gives like security, confidence. Yeah, because we know these people are speaking to a lot of people around the world, and they're accepted with their research around the world in certain topics. And I think this is a good strategy. So I mean, you talked about the NSCA, and now we have the NSCA Germany or global chapter that are trying to push that a bit in Europe, and we also try to support them, or they support us. And I think this is a good first step. Yeah, maybe to take away, which is a bit broader over the countries, but which creates a kind of quite similar philosophy at the end.
yeah. With in regards to sort of implementation of programs and how you coach your athletes, what's some other sort of equipment or sort of protocols that you need to have in those programs? I know it
Yeah,
depends individually, athletes and all that stuff, but like what's some of the stuff that you use to help you build like these programs?
yeah. So what we often try to push, and to push more and more also in rehab, is the eccentric training, and we have a lot of different tools we are using. So the flywheels, also the Exerfly, so the motorized one, we use the 1080 Quantum. Um, so these are definitely great tools, and I think the eccentric training or eccentric stimulus is still something that yeah has to be pushed more and more because yeah, it's an overload. It's often a new stimulus. It's something that we don't have on a daily basis. So this is where we can also push boundaries. But also here, you need a good build up. You need a good knowledge how to manage those intensities. And but this is something I think, yeah, a lot of people are just afraid by hearing eccentric or overload, and we're too often maybe thinking about 300 kilo barbell on the back. And I mean, it's not only about that. So flywheel offers definitely a lot of possibilities. Also by using a leg press where you slow down with one leg and you push back with two legs. It's a great way to create safe eccentric overload stimulus. And but definitely with the 1080 quantum, then we can push the boundaries quite far because this is really yeah, a crazy machine.
Yeah,
Let's say
I've
so.
never actually used the 1080 before, but from what I've seen, it is a really good way to increase that load through different sort of fast acting movements.
Yeah, slow and fast, isokinetic stuff, which is also a pretty good stimulus. And we also trying to use those more functional isokinetics, which you can do with the 1080 motion in rehab. So this gives us already at the early rehab good information that we can use afterwards in strength and conditioning.
Yeah, like I think so. I like to work with eccentrics quite a lot. I'm I'm a big fan of the triphasic sort of program building philosophy,
Yes.
where you're sort of using these isometrics, eccentrics, and concentrics
Yeah.
all equally to sort of balance out sort of different muscles and ability to move properly. And I'm a firm believer that by doing these different types of holds or eccentric movements, concentric movements, there's a lot of stimuli that goes towards your sort of stabilizing muscles. Now, people like to show off the big muscles, the big guns, the stuff, but it's actually within these stabilizing muscles that injuries are not prevented but mitigated, where you
Yeah.
can reduce that impact of injuries. Like having been through sport at a high level and being injured and then having to quit that sport, that's something that I've sort of really honed in on is like how can we mitigate as much as we can an injury from happening, but like what we mentioned at the start, how can we bring them back quicker? Because then the longer that they're out of their sport, the more psychologically damaging it is for them. So for me, I'm a big fan of using these different types of movements to sort of build up that resilience.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely isometrics also we use them quite a lot also for post-activation potentiation. It's a great way to do it. It's a great way to manage fatigue as well, fatigue accumulation. Um, Definitely interesting. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on PAP?
I think it works, but it depends. So we know that also here again, stronger athletes can get more out of it. They tolerate it more. And I mean, often also it's just like a good warm up effect. So maybe if the intensity in the warm up was not good enough, then with the potentiation, you definitely have this high
Mm.
intensity warm up. So, but we use that quite a lot, especially close to competitions, and I also see that also mentally for the guys, this is really a good thing to do, especially also if you're using isometrics because they really feel that they can push against something that doesn't move, so create this very very high intensity, which is way more than a dynamic one around at the end.
Yeah, I'm. I've heard both sides of the arguments between pop, and I lean more towards it's a good thing for athletes, specifically to sort of get them prepped for not just physically but mentally as well. So like as
Yeah,
soon as you get into that zone, you're like, okay, let's switch on, let's do these movements, let's do this exercise to make sure that we're ready. And I can't remember which book it was in, but there's this theory that, well, it's not really a theory. There was a coach, an American football coach, who would not allow their athletes to strap their helmets on until after they were done talking. So it's this idea where as soon as they clip themselves in, that's
yeah,
it. Like
they turn on.
that is it. And I love
Great.
that because like you have to have these like switch ons. I
Yeah,
made a post about this not long ago, but it's that idea of what switches your athletes on and off.
yeah,
Like I often like ask my athletes, "What's your one key phrase?" And that key phrase is essentially like, if I say this in my head, that's me like in the zone. That's like me going full out now. So I ask my athletes so I can use it with them. So say mine says, "All right, let's go, let's go, let's go," and then that just like gets me in the zone where I'm like, I this is the only thing that's happening now.
yeah.
There's nothing else. So by asking my athletes what's your key phrase is essentially that switch on, is that strapping on.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's also about focus, and it's also if you're going back to using the VBT, you know that the most direct stimulus is just the feedback, so that the motivation you create via those things to express force or to express force pretty fast. So I mean the mental thing or the mental aspects in coaching, it's really important that can change a lot at the end. Yeah.
100%. Like yeah, it's just so like, and I always say this is like coaching is essentially a human skill. To be an effective coach, you need to be a human first, but then you also need to realize that you're not just there for you. You're there to sort of build this athlete as well.
Yeah.
Um, like I often like say to my athletes, if you're not understanding something, tell me because it's my fault. I've not explained it right, and it's the idea where not everyone learns one way. There's multiple ways
Mhm.
of learning. How can you sort of switch that to make sure that they're understanding what you're wanting them to do?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, at the end, it's also about coaching language, and you have to be flexible on that side as well, because yeah, we have everyone is different. We have a lot of individuals, and yeah, and as we talked at the very beginning, that one day it can be like that, the other day it can be the other way around. So and you can handle a lot of those issues or different states via coaching, definitely.
100%. What would be one piece of advice that you'd give like S&C coaches and injury prevention and physiotherapists coming into this industry?
Yeah. So as I mentioned a lot now, it's definitely sharing, caring, be open-minded, and reflective on yourself a lot. And but on the other hand, also um, accept to make mistakes, because if you don't accept to make mistakes, so it's difficult to learn. You know, it's a lot about yeah, trying out, and we know that not every philosophy or method we're using will work for everyone anyway. So yeah, and if you accept that, then you have a chance to learn, and this is the most important one. And if you're not able to accept mistakes, then I'm sure you will not push the boundaries as you should. So this is really important.
100%. What's one mistake that you made and what did you learn from it?
There have been a lot. um, yeah, but I think what I mentioned right now, it's also what I learned from my mentors, that they yeah, they told us you have to accept that there will be mistakes, but it's at the end it's a good thing. But for sure, it's not about creating an insecure environment and get athletes injured. It's not that kind of taking a risk. So you have to reflect what you're doing, but just I mean you have a lot of methods in front of you, and you have to take a decision, and maybe you're just pushing into the wrong direction for some weeks, but then just be honest to yourself. Okay, now this was not the right way, and then accept to change that, and also accept to explain that to your athletes, because we're not perfect at the end.
Mm,
But there again, I think it's important to build up experience from the very beginning to be able to have that talk to athletes. And as you said before, so really also learn the athletes to communicate and to be open, that yeah, then we can create something and build it up. And I think this is maybe what I learned at the very beginning. I coming in with a strategy, so everyone has to be the same, so to go with that strategy, but not that's not working. So I try to accept the individual and trying to find a solution for the individual, because anyway we try to put the athlete into the middle and to create a round. So it can never be one size fits all thing.
mm,
That's not it's just not realistic.
100%. You could not have said it better. um, no, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to sort of plug anything that you've got going on and your Instagram and where people could reach you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, especially on Instagram. As a Swiss strength coach, I definitely try to share a lot what we are doing, a lot what we are presenting on conferences, because as I said, it's I'm happy to show our philosophy. I'm also happy to have reactions on that, to create discussions on that. So this is something, and the other thing is, yeah, have a look at the workshop, at the anniversary workshop in October. It's good. It would be nice to see a lot of people down there. It's all in English, so it's really it should be an international event. We have early birds running until end of April. So have a look at the program on the Instagram from the SSCA .Swiss, and hopefully we can see a lot of you guys in Machling in Switzerland in October. That would be great.
Perfect. So thank you so much for coming on and um,
Thank you, Manny.
taking some time to explain what the SSC are doing and sort of how your coaching philosophies and how you sort of pay forward to your athletes and your sort of coaching philosophies as well. Like it's something that I'm really interested in learning more about how coaching gets done in different countries and what some of the best coaches out there are doing and how we can all sort of come together and learn from the same processes.
Yeah, thank you, Manny. It was a great pleasure.